Hello, hello, Ryan here again. I'm just going to keep this gravy train flowing, figuring out what it is that we're doing here. I had an interesting series of conversations with some people who I have invited into this community, and I think it might take a little bit of prodding to get the flywheel turning, but I can tell that there are some seeds under the surface. And so, what I want to do today, just kicking off the week and getting back in the flow of things, is I want to noodle a little bit on this question that has been circling. And that question for me is this really about being a founder, about being an entrepreneur, about starting something? Or is this more general than that? Are we talking about reclaiming one's life after years go by working, or maybe starting a family, or maybe living in a set of patterns that are so predictable and repeated that over time our sense of self can get buried under these layers of habit? And so I want to dig into that a little bit. I think that there is there are some commonalities that I've seen with people who are entrepreneurs. I believe that it's a certain type of person um, that decides to start their own thing, or joins a team that's doing something that is against the grain, or big vision. I feel like those types of people who are attracted to the entrepreneurial environment are different, but that makes us unique. That makes us a set. That makes us um, certain commonalities that come to the surface. So I want to share a little bit of story. This is kind of the first component here, of the core conversation is story. And what I want to do is I want to open the floor for more opportunities to share, so we can start to see those commonalities, so we can start to pull on some threads, or maybe feel less lonely. But yeah, pulling on those threads that bring up, what was our past like? What was our childhood like? What led us to put so much into whatever it is that we did? And for the time being, I'm going to continue to talk about starting something, because that's my mindset. And if there are answers to this question of, is this more general, I think maybe those will flesh out. So the story. I had the unique opportunity in the last month to write my life story. I filled a composition notebook. I filled almost all the pages. I think it ended up being 150 or 160 pages, handwritten. I just sat down and I wrote. And it was an assignment from Julia Cameron, an Artist Way assignment. And it was called a narrative timeline. And I literally started with my earliest memories, being an infant, and what that experience was like. I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and I went through, that kind of coming into being, and what life was like for me, and what type of a child I was, and the things that I remember. And then that collided with uh, preschool and kindergarten, and all of the trouble that I got into, and almost immediate resistance I felt of the world to who I was. This mandate to sit still, to be quiet, to pay attention, when I had so much creativity, so much energy, and I thought I was smarter on some level than a lot of the adults around me. And so there were these constant battles for authority or freedom. And my point is, in the telling of that story, because it went all the way from kindergarten and earliest memories, all the way up to the present day, all the way up through my college years, my getting married, my relationship, having kids, starting my business, post business. I got to see it all from this 30,000-foot view. And one of the things that Julia Cameron says that this exercise does is, by sitting down and writing our story, it gives us this this power over our own narrative. And I have told little bits and pieces of my story my whole life. I've talked about what it was like being a troublemaker, always in trouble, elementary school student. I've talked about, these different spots on the map, but I'd never put it all together in its totality and seen my life as this big zoomed out picture. And that is, I feel, the level of story that I want to encourage here in this community. That, as I said, when I was in those men's groups and I heard these people retelling the same stories over and over, some of them, they were 30-year-old stories, and every week they would tell the same little snippet, the same little way, how they were a victim, how it affected them, how, reinforcing this narrative in this little blip of time. And I think that the story component, or the ability to see our story as full, not just the component parts, is one of the first things that we do naturally. And maybe not the full view. And I'm not assigning any homework, or I'm not encouraging anyone to do that full, write your life story yet. That might come. I mean, I just did this, and I've been 4 years into my creative recovery. But in the meantime, I think that there are these little pockets of time that are particularly charged, and that can be the time of running a business. That could be the time when you are really invested in a particular interest or a community. But I think that is sort of the first little invitation that I'd like to formalize, is where in the timeline do you see the biggest pivot points? Let's put it that way. There's a few places that I look back on reliably and say, oh my gosh, that was a moment when the universe split in two, where there's this one path that I could have got to, and instead I went this way. And I think about it all the time. And so I think that might be one of the first assignments. So for me, what I'm trying to do here is this is also part of it, right? This is part of being the type of people we are, I believe, is we have so much potential, so many ideas, and it can get like scrambled egg soup. And already, all my little mind notes here, I've got a lot to start digging into. I think this is what I decided this morning in my yoga class, thinking about this, is I'm going to come in, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to record the long and the short of it. So this was the long. This was the getting to the idea, getting to the nugget, this first prong, this first story. Clarify, who's coming to this community. It's mostly people I'm inviting right now, but ultimately, who will it speak to? And do they have to be founders, or just people who have lived a life that maybe was restrained in certain ways? This culture that we exist in, this global culture that tries to squish and conform and direct our energies into these patterns that I don't agree with. Most of my life has been in rebellion to that, even the companies that I started, even the way that I work today. So that's where I'm going to be kind of focusing for the next couple weeks, I think, or at least the next couple days, is just figuring out this story component. I think it comes first. I think in order for us to communicate with each other, to communicate with ourselves, it requires this focus, this focus on our story. So the long and the short of it is, this is the long of it. This is the whole idea, spiral, spider webbing. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to thank you for following along if you are. And then I'm going to record a second version that is just the condensed nugget, the nucleus of what I came to here. And then I'm going to post that as well for people that just want like the quick, all right, what's the assignment? What's the thought? What's the meditation? So I'm going to stop it there. Thanks for tuning in. As always, please leave any comments, feedback, ideas that pop up as I am kind of noodling through this. This is all just open. The paint is wet. There's a lot that is possible, and it will take your all right, I'm going to stop there. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.